everybody here today. We're really excited to start some discussions, hopefully within your organization, around a new approach to leveraging your data assets within your organization. And we've really spent a lot of time thinking through the way to structure this event today. So as we move into it, we have two parts for you. Move to the next slide, Leslie. We can start out here in the overview where you'll hear from myself, Ryan Gross. I'm a vice president in our emerging technology group, as well as Brian McFarland, who's one of our other thought leaders around the modern data enterprise approach. And also a couple of Pariveda partners. Mark Kobe is joining us from Databricks and Steve Cooper from Amazon Web Services to lend their perspective on what some of the largest players in the market around building data platforms and enabling modern data approaches are seeing. You'll find that a lot of what we've come to in terms of conclusions and the right approach has come from the similar experience that we've had through many different delivery projects. As I know, several people are still filtering in here. On the next couple of slides, we will have links over into the interactive portion of our presentation on slido.com, event code MDE. That'll be important in the overview section, but I think even more so during our breakout sessions, which we will have a Pariveda panelist leading each one of those. Moving on to the next slide. We have three pillars to the MDE approach, and each of those is going to be covered in its own breakout session during our presentation today. And we have an esteemed Pariveda panelist here to lead each one of those. We have Dave Enkfer, who is going to be leading discussion around building your data platform to support value delivery and data governance activities. Ansley Gaujour is going to be leading our discussion of the way that you derive both your platform and governance requirements from the types of use cases, the ways that your business will actually derive value from data. And then I'll be leading, along with David Dansereau, a discussion on data governance and how modern approaches leveraging the platform technology to build governance into the value delivery lifecycle are changing the way that data is governed and really enabling organizations to mature that area beyond where they've been stuck in the past. So we're really looking forward to driving the discussion across all three of these pillars. And in order to have that discussion, again, like I mentioned before, we are leveraging slido.com. We have a live poll right now. Might switch back over to it just for a second here so I can get a little bit of input on what people are looking for, and then we'll jump into the introductory materials. All right, looks like a variety of different things. Seems like we have people here around the data governance, data platform, and value pillars, so that is great to see. Happy to have you here and happy to be starting conversations. Appreciate the input, and let's jump into it. So in order to start the discussion, what we're talking about here with the latest capabilities that are being provided around big data processing, cloud native data platforms, and AI and machine learning is really a series of technology waves coming together. And this isn't really the first time that we've had this type of new technology adoption. In fact, it's one of many. And so we wanted to start out here by looking back throughout human history at one of the other advances that really seems the most similar to this one. In order to do that, we have to go admittedly pretty far back in history to look at how the introduction of the magnetic compass led to the mass exploration movement that enabled civilizations to discover the world. Prior to the compass being a tool in order to navigate around the world, sailors relied on celestial navigation, which was highly irregular in terms of the ability to actually navigate. What if it was cloudy? What if your ship got off track and you were unable to find some of the key stars that you use for navigation? It was fraught with risk and really tied a lot to the ways that decisions are being made right now by organizations when they're not driving based on data and analytics of that data that help show what is actually happening. What is your true bearing in terms of the way your business is performing, and where will you be going if you head down the path that you have defined? Very similarly, the processing of big data to understand how your organization is going to be able to navigate the uncharted waters that you end up in, especially right now with the events going on in the world, will be really important in order to get a successful result. Now you start to look at some of the technologies with AI, machine learning, prescriptive analytics, and actually what you're looking at there is not just a compass, but something more akin to a GPS navigation system that allows you to have the technology augment the decision-making to the point where nearly anyone is capable of understanding how to move forward. And so just like some of the adoption of technologies in the past, those countries that understood the compass were able to navigate much further and faster than any of their peers. Similarly, technologies that are truly, or companies that are truly insight-driven are really driving forward and stealing market share from their competitors. So moving forward, we really like this prediction that Forrester made in 2017, which based on subsequent research has certainly proven to be true, that truly insight-driven businesses, which we see to be pretty synonymous with those that have realized the modern data enterprise vision we will be sharing with you today, are going to be stealing $1.2 trillion per annum from their competitors this year. Now, according to some stats from Gartner, there's already over $2 trillion of economic value being driven by AI and machine learning alone last year. And so if anything, this number may be a little bit low. And when you think about these numbers, you think about the companies that drive that, and most people go to the FANG set of companies, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google. And so we want to understand from our audience who you think is driving forward the most value using these new data-driven insights. And for that, again, if you head over to Slido, we have a poll for you. Bringing up a chart here in just a moment, we'll take a look at companies and their growth rates over the 2010s decade. So starting in 2011 and going through the end of 2019, you see some of the common companies there that we know it's not them. What company actually drove the largest stock increase over that time period at 1,560%? So if you're on Slido, you can enter your response here. We'll wait about 30 seconds to get people to answer here. And remember, it's not the FANG companies. Yeah, I see a lot of Tesla in there, Uber, Amazon, FleetCor. That's an interesting one as well. So give it another 10 seconds here for people's responses to come in. Oh, all right. And so we actually, seems like we may have some people on here who do know this bit of trivia. You see it coming to the forefront now. And as we switch back over, it is actually Domino's Pizza. So looking at all of the advances that are driven through technology, people gravitate towards these major tech companies that have been disrupting industry after industry, when in fact, one of the largest changes was in an industry that certainly wasn't disrupted. Domino's still provides pizzas and delivers them to their customers same way they did before. But what they did was they built a data underpinning for their entire business end to end, from understanding their customers' profiles, where they order pizza, what drives them to do that, to every step of the manufacture and delivery process. They were able to individually optimize every piece of their business. And all of those combined gains led to that modern data enterprise approach. So enterprise-wide across their entire operations, they were able to improve to the point where they took, a laggard in their industry, which admittedly is part of what led to this being the largest percentage gain, that they had a lower bar to start from. But it really gives you the encouragement that no matter what industry you're in, no matter what your current profile is in terms of your data maturity, you can make these types of gains. And that really matches Pariveda's experience as well. So as we move to the next slide here, we've been working with our clients really over a longer period of time, but since 2017, we've done 20 different clients executing on this modern data enterprise approach. And across the industries we've worked with, none of them have been extreme high-tech companies going in to disrupt a new industry. They've been traditional players within those industries seeking to capture that part of the $1.2 trillion we were talking about before. And they do that by going after specific use cases that are high value in their industry, and then using that to build up their capability over time, leveraging some of the great technology that's available in order to accelerate that process. So if you look at what these companies had in common in terms of the modern data enterprise approach, moving on to the next slide, we had a definition that we built up over time here, that the modern data enterprise is a mature organization, meaning that they've reached a farther state of maturity than many of their peers, based on thoughtfully driving value-based business outcomes by leveraging technology and data platforms. So the thoughtfully component there hints at the governance pillar here, that the way that you do this can be done so that you don't give up or you don't add a ton of risk. The business outcomes and value-based component is key in that you drive your prioritization and actions across the data platform and the processes from where you're going to be driving value back to your stakeholders. And then the technology platform and data platform component is a massive accelerator that enables you to do this more quickly. Looking at the three words here, modern is there to hint at cloud technology, the adaptive processes that have come out that we'll discuss in the governance pillar later today. Data being obviously the core underpinning that is now being treated differently, driving action and leveraging the massive and growing number of inputs that can become data. And the enterprise component of this hints at what we see with Domino's, that driving the biggest impact comes through collaboration across the entire organization. Moving on, I'd like to talk about a couple of different scenarios here. The first one is an agriculture company that we worked with. They make equipment for the agriculture industry, and they had built an IoT platform that we helped them out with. But based on that success, they saw the capability of modern data processing for their entire enterprise. So they stopped looking outward at what their customers were using their equipment for and looking inward at the way that they manufacture, supply, get the parts to manufacture, and distribute and service those machines in the field. With that, they took a deliberate effort, created a funded effort to modernize their overall data infrastructure, looked at 300 different data sets, picked a few high-value use cases to spearhead the process that returned something on the order of $100 million of value over the initial kickoff to build momentum, while also driving legacy part saving or legacy cost savings across their distributed data platform by modernizing on the AWS and Databricks platforms. After that success, they now have 700 users active on this platform, nearly 40 concurrent data product development projects executing, leveraging the common governance and data platform approaches that have been developed. Additionally, we have worked with a major airline here to build their underlying data lake platform, taking a domain-driven approach where each of their core domains across the business can leverage any of the data that's available in order to build their own data products, while also exposing both their data as well as the combination of their data and others to the broader enterprise, enabling that collaborative approach to building up based on the value needs in a decentralized way. And finally, we've worked with an education company that provides a online education approach, which is obviously an interesting area to be in today's world. That organization had a legacy data footprint that was really focused on keeping the lights on, making sure that they met their compliance needs. And what we have been working with them on is a full revamp of their approach to leveraging data. That means building out the data platform, leveraging technology on top of the cloud. But that platform is built in order to support a new process so that they think of data as a product first. They treat all of their employees that touch their data as stewards tasked with improving that data. And they drive towards high value use cases that come from their unique position, having insight into the sub-day detailed activity and outcomes across their entire student base. They're going to be using that information to bring new data products to the education market that simply haven't been possible in the past. And while this is 3 examples of projects that we've worked on, we've certainly worked on several more that led into the details you'll be hearing about later on. And to talk through a little bit more of that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark Kobe from Databricks to discuss some of the work that Pariveda and Databricks have done together.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Hello, everyone. This is Mark Kobe. I lead the worldwide consulting and systems integrator partner team here at Databricks. Our mission is to help customers be more successful by working with partners to bring end-to-end solutions with data and AI. And we're really delighted to recommend Pariveda as one of Databricks' top partners. We've seen Pariveda develop some of the most successful and complex customer engagements with Databricks and AWS. And as a reflection of that, last month at the Spark and AI Summit, our virtual conference that was attended by tens of thousands of people, we're delighted to recognize Pariveda with our Customer Impact Award for the transformational work they've delivered. You may know Databricks having first become part of the modern data landscape because of Apache Spark and the notebooks that run on our cloud data and AI platform on AWS. I'm really excited to share that we've continued to innovate and grow, and Databricks coined the term unified analytics, which helps organizations solve their toughest challenges by bringing together data engineering, data science, and business analysts to collaborate on the use cases that are going to help them achieve their value. This is a fast, simple, collaborative platform, and it runs on AWS within your own VPC. So you can really focus on your business objectives. And together with Spark and our notebooks, we've built on that new technologies like Databricks Delta, bringing the best of both data lakes on S3, together with data warehouses to achieve analytics at petabyte scale, and machine learning model management with our platform called ML Flow that helps you get models from training to production more quickly. So we recommend using Pariveda to help translate your business objectives to the capabilities of the Databricks Unified Analytics platform, build those applications, operationalize and manage them so that you can achieve your vision of becoming a modern data enterprise. Pariveda has trained and certified their resources on Databricks, and in fact, they receive the same training Databricks' own field engineering resources received. So you can trust them to bring the right resources who are experienced and can help you be successful with those data engineering and data science use cases. If you're interested in learning more about how Databricks and Pariveda work together, I'd be glad to set up a conversation with you. So please reach out. And thanks to Ryan and team for having me on the call. And I'll hand it back to them to share more about the modern data enterprise.
Thank you very much, Mark. So we are trying to make this as easy as possible with two Ryans on Paraveta's introductory presentation team. I'm the other Ryan McFarland, a principal in our Chicago offices and part of Paraveta's thought leadership team that created the modern data enterprise, which we often abbreviate to MDE. MDE was really formulated given our many client experiences and learning along the way. Some of these early efforts struggled due to a variety of different factors, such as a lack of client technical capabilities, an unclear path to achieving value, or no effective decision model from a governance perspective. You may be here today due to similar challenges in projects and efforts within your organization. We concluded over time that our data strategy and execution efforts for clients were being hindered by a lack of coordination across these pillars. Too much isolation. We formed the modern data enterprise to consist of three pillars to interact effectively to directly address the complications and challenges we observe on data efforts. Our value pillar focuses on being flexible to help you identify and realize short-term credibility gain type of wins, while establishing a long-term data strategy for your organization. Our platform pillar provides a set of Paraveta Data Forge acceleration frameworks that can provide the foundation for effective data operations while delivering these value streams. Our governance pillar ensures an informed level of security and compliance while meeting business goals around data discoverability needed for innovation. I simply refer to this as insight requires action to deliver value. Paraveta leverages platform technology offered by AWS and Databricks to provide the insights needed for your organization through governance action to deliver value. Next slide. Assessing where your organization is in relation to these pillars is an excellent first step towards data maturity. Paraveta's MDE maturity model was published in 2018, well before resilience became the magical buzzword that evidently separates COVID survivors from the losers. A brief review shows that organizations can have wide variance between their maturity within these different pillars. Some organizations have very disciplined business objectives supporting a well-defined vision that does not include significant investments in data technology. Other organizations can have focus on efficiency and operational technical components, but have not explored how predictive analytics might significantly change their business strategy. Understanding how these pillars interact to impact systemic outcomes is the key to helping you drive your organization forward to generate positive outcomes. Next slide. It's not just Paraveta. McKinsey's Advanced Analytics portal identifies that not only is this hard, but it also draws distinction between technical and business foundations. McKinsey shares the view that the weakest link is the key critical path item to ultimately building value. More importantly, they recognize that you are only as good as the weakest link within your enterprise. So if we reflect on that in Paraveta's MDE maturity model, you can heavily invest in technology or potentially in value identification, but ultimately the outcomes are dependent on the coordination of these efforts. So if you're really proficient in one area, tech, the weakness in the others will result in disappointing overall results. Put even more simply, business people must work and use technology in a responsible, governed way to achieve the best transformational outcomes from advanced analytics. And these concepts aren't new. You may notice consistency with common challenges in any transformation: elimination of silos, cross-discipline collaboration, shared commitment towards mutual success. To discuss further, I'd like to introduce Steve Cooper, who is here with us from AWS Data Driven Everything, to share some of the significant advantages that AWS provides to help drive MDE value realization. Steve?
Thanks very much, Ryan. Or should I say, thanks very much, the other Ryan. It's interesting from an AWS perspective when we talk to some of our premier consulting partners like Paraveda, that we're reaching the same conclusions in the sense that we may use different words, but the drivers of success for our customers are largely the same. My name is Steve Cooper. I am responsible for our worldwide program called Data Driven Everything, or D2E. And it's really about this idea of accelerating our customers' journey to become data-driven organizations. For anyone that would have seen our CEO last reInvent 2019, you would have seen Andy talk about some of the key challenges that our customers see. And really, there's four of them, but broadly they're about alignment of senior business and technology leadership, having top-down ambitious goals. Thirdly, it's, the cloud isn't hard, but it does require training and experience. And then fourthly, it's really around don't get paralyzed before you start a transformation. Really look at, across a portfolio, what are some of the compelling use cases that you can start immediately with. And that's really the heritage in terms of where D2E was born. If we just pop onto the next slide here. Okay, so one of the first things that we quite often see with our customers is around what are we actually trying to do. And as Ryan said, a lot of customers, specifically some of our technology customers, are really focused on building foundational platforms. But it's much more than that. So we actually start the D2E vision and journey with a clear view of what a data-driven organization is. Very similar to what the two Ryans have talked about. It's really this idea of leveraging data as an asset to drive sustained innovation. And let's just pause on that for a second. What we often see is that our customers sort of tend to separate journeys, and they tend to think of like a data journey out one side, maybe related to kind of things like governance and ontology and taxonomies and things like that, and then innovation out the other side. But in reality, the two of them are just inextricably linked. And we see that our customers that are making successful journey and sort of transformation are the ones that are able to really use data in order to unlock innovation, create actionable insights, and really supercharge the experience for customers, stakeholders, employees, internal, external. We really now focus and leverage the concept of a data flywheel a lot with our customers. And again, the data flywheel is really around the idea of focus on the business's most compelling challenges, and that's where you start. Again, to kind of anchor back to what Andy said, is this idea of interlock your business and technology leadership on as the first kind of prerequisite almost. And then with them, identify what are some of the compelling challenges the businesses have. And focus on those as data products. And really with a data product, it's not just about developing it and then transitioning to operations and letting someone else worry about it. It's really about the full flywheel. Deliver the product into the hands of the users. We tend to call them our customers. Focus on the experience of the customer. Focus on feedback they're giving to you, and use that feedback in order to enhance the product. So it becomes a very iterative cycle, with the idea being that, perhaps the first time you turn that flywheel, it can be challenging. You're thinking about new methodologies, new techniques, new ways of looking at data, new ways of looking at problems. But as you do it more and more, it becomes, let's say, simpler, and it becomes far more innovative. And what happens is you start delivering iterative value to the business. And that means that you're also ingesting and handling some of the most strategic data for the business, which, as you kind of look up to the top left-hand corner of the flywheel here, if you can get that data into the hands of business analysts, data scientists, data engineers, that's where experimentation and innovation really happens, because it's freeing the data up from the silos of corporate domains. It's freeing it up from IT in many cases, and actually giving the data into the hands of business analysts so they can move really fast with business problems. So let's just pop on to the next slide here. The typical challenges that we hear when we look across our customers there's some very consistent themes. And again, this is independent almost of industries. So whether I'm talking to financial services, whether it's media entertainment, whether it's healthcare, you see very typical challenges, albeit some of them will be prioritized in different ways. The first one is often around, what does great look like? And from a point of view of AWS and with our partners, for example, with Paraveta, it really is this idea of MDE, of a data-driven organization, really about this idea of putting data into the hands of the users, not just solving point-in-time use cases. Secondly, as I speak to customers, it's interesting. I'll quite often speak to technologists within our customer base who are focused on solving technology use cases, or they're focused on solving so many use cases that are coming from the business that they're literally flooded. So quite often for customers that are looking to start and to propel and accelerate their journey, it's about identification and prioritization of the right use cases. Not all use cases are the same, and some of them are more compelling in terms of delivery. Thirdly, it's around this idea of breaking down the silos. We quite often see and recommend this idea of, as we see kind of growing in the last 10 years, the chief data officer role. One role within our customer organizations that are really there to kind of purposely break silos in a very opinionated and prescriptive manner. We then focus a lot around actually how do you build a data-driven culture. It's a challenge. You can't just expect to put out a data lake or put out a data catalog and expect that wonderful things are going to happen. You also have to do something to kind of create that community. Quite often intertwined into that is help bridge the gaps in skills and technologies that exist today. And then for really, obviously everyone on the call here today, from Mark, Ryan, and myself, the two Ryans and myself, it's security. That last challenge of, I think we would all call it job zero for ourselves. We definitely do in AWS. It's ensuring that across all of those challenges, we respect data privacy, that we're modeling and building security, compliance, and governance in from day one. We just pop onto the next slide here. The approach that we take from a methodology point of view is really around helping our customers both mobilize and then also scale their journey. And by the way, thank you. And it's really around this idea of the mobilization is really focused on data products. So from the prepare, design, and actually building and moving those out. And again, it's really about an ambitious goal of like getting that out to the customer at speed. And then secondly, this idea that, simple, data products are not sufficient. You also need to be able to look across the broader organization and scale that across the entire enterprise. Let's pop on to the next slide, and what we're going to do now is like double click on some of these concepts. In preparation, that first sort of, think about that first engagement with a customer. It's really about, again, getting business and technologists together, ensuring that in the room you get both parties, ensuring that they're both looking at meaningful use cases. And when we think about a use case, we're always looking to get that balance of, on one side, something that's meaningful. It's a clear problem, clear objectives. Typically, I always like to look at, is there a KPI that the business is always measuring on this? Is it really part of the fabric and DNA of the business? And I also like this idea of focus on something that is going to really answer the problems of skeptics within your organization. Look for compelling challenges and difficult challenges. And then secondly, balance that with feasibility. You want to make sure that it's not just about feasibility in terms of data and so on, but it's also about having clear sponsors, people that actually are going to be able to sit with you through the implementation, through the journey, and remove blockers. Start small, but have a broad ambition, and ensure that there's a clear team that you're actually building skills with. We just pop onto the next slide now. We then go into a design phase with any kind of data product. And really the design phase, again, what we've seen with Paraveta and what we've seen with our partners and indeed ourselves internally within Amazon, is it's all about working backwards. I mean, that's our Amazonian version of design thinking. And working backwards really means you start with the customer. And we actually do this over 1 to 2 days, all about focused on what is the customer challenge? What's the problem or opportunity we're looking to solve? And then with that, very quickly then saying, okay, what's the technology? The key point here is don't lead with the technology. Just because you have a Swiss Army penknife, it doesn't mean that you want to use all the blades on it, but focus on those real compelling business use cases. And then if you work backwards, the technology becomes a lot more transparent. Let me just pop onto the next slide now. We then get into a build phase. And again, it's really around locking with your business, with your partners, with your technologists and so on really ambitious goals. Now, the purpose of a build is really twofold. It's kind of subtle, but I think it's important to emphasize it. One is delivering value to the business, convincing those skeptics that we talked about. But the second part is also, as I mentioned, the cloud is different. It's not difficult, but it's different compared to what a lot of our builders and a lot of our customers work in. So the build is also about building experience. It's about actually leveraging the right tools and technologies in the right situations for the right use cases and building skills in that. We think of our builds as typically spread over 3 phases. And again, in terms of ambitious goals, we always think of 60 days in terms of the delivery of the first minimal viable product here. There's everything around kind of readiness accelerators. And again, obviously Paraveta has Data Forge, which I'm sure you guys will be talking about later on. There's a lot of accelerators that are out there in various places, marketplaces and so on. You then go into a kind of a co-build of an MVP. It's curious to look at the word on-site here, given the sort of the situation with COVID that we're in. A lot of this is now obviously done virtual, again through our partners as we go out to our customers. But the build is all really around building with experts from partners and from AWS, and ensuring that you're building that experience within your organization. And then lastly, getting it out into the hands of users. And that's really, for me, that's where the job really starts, because it's then that you start getting that fast feedback. As Eric Ries calls it, it's really a minimal viable learning product in terms of getting a fast product out, and then you start to sort of that back swoop in the flywheel in terms of feedback. We just pop onto the next slide. With that experience under our belt, with that first MVP of data products released out to the business and delivering value, you then move on to scale. And we've purposely put the idea of a broader scale across an enterprise later on, because we do feel that it's important to build upon that experience that you've already built on the previous phase. We tend to look at scale over 2 dimensions, business and technology. Within business, we've got perspectives within our cloud adoption framework of business, people, and governance. So typically, the scale readiness, which is a one-day event that we run, is focused on understanding, for example, what are the other use cases that are out there across the wider enterprise? What's the readiness of our people, our organization, in terms of actually being able to produce and recreate and create more insights? And then thirdly, around governance, it's both program and data governance that we obviously look at. Program in terms of our ability to deliver iterative value through an agile framework, but then data governance in terms of our ability to manage data at speed and at enterprise scale. And then there's obviously the technology framework as well, platform security and operations. And a lot of our focus there is around ensuring that the right fit for purpose technology is available at the right time. Again, our positioning here is don't go and build a fully fledged platform and think it's going to solve you every need that you haven't even thought about. Build it on an iterative basis as and when you encounter the needs. So you have a long-term journey, but you know where you are and you're building and turning on those components as and when you need them. We just pop onto the next slide. And all of this comes together really with kind of, a lot of what we've talked about here is it's much more than technology. It's also about people and process. The view that we take more and more, and as we talk to our customers, is this idea of a modern data community. And it's really about breaking the traditional thinking of how data products get delivered. When I was more a practitioner in the area, there was really the technologists. And as an operator of our platform, I was responsible for the quality of the data I was ingesting, responsible for the uptime of the platform, and then also creating insights. We take a more nuanced view to that now. And there's really three broad personas we think of. You've got producers that want to share data, and they really have deep understanding of their domain. They understand their governance, they understand data quality, they understand their metadata. You've then got platform teams that are really responsible for running secure, scalable platforms and ensuring that it's as simple as possible to ingest data. And then thirdly, you've got the consumers. You've got the teams that really are close to the business. They want to move at speed. They want to be able to get data. They want to test business ideas, and then they want to move that into production with minimal sort of blockers. Now, every customer is different. This is how we tend to look at it, but it's really around this idea of producers, platform, and consumers. Okay, thanks very much. And I think Ryan McFarland, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. I hope you certainly see the alignment between AWS, data-driven everything, and the modern data enterprise. I do. If you could go to the next slide. You know, I do want to remind you of the three pillars: value, platform, and governance. And I think one of the reasons why the pillars are important, I think one of the ways that we can demonstrate that is to discuss a few stories about what happens when the pillars themselves are weak. So from the value pillars perspective, we know the organizations aren't equal in maturity across these pillars. To illustrate, one organization had built a centralized capability in advanced analytics with a heavy investment in data scientists, data engineers, other key digital roles. The CEO regularly mentioned the company was using AI techniques, but with never any specificity. Very much a case study in the hype cycle. In practice, the company ran a lot of AI programs and pilots. Not a single one was adopted by the business at scale. The fundamental reason? Top management didn't really grasp the concept of advanced analytics. They struggled to define valuable problems for the analytics team to solve and failed to invest in building the right skills. As a result, they could not get traction with the pilots to turn them into operational successes. The analytics team simply wasn't working on the right problems for their organization and wasn't able to use the latest tools and techniques as a result. The company halted the initiative after a year as the outsized investment wasn't tied to meaningful returns. Next. So the Irishman in me likes to discuss governance as the red-headed stepchild pillar, unloved but still part of the family. One large industrial manufacturer ran afoul of regulators when it developed an algorithm to predict absenteeism. The company did mean well. It sought to understand the correlation between job conditions and absenteeism so that it could rethink work processes that were apt to lead to injuries or illness. Unfortunately, the machine learning algorithms were able to cluster employees based on ethnicity, region, gender, even though such data fields were switched off, and flagged correlations between race and absenteeism. Luckily, the company was able to pinpoint and preempt the problem before it infected employee relations and led to a significant regulatory fine. The takeaway, working with data, particularly sensitive data, introduces a host of risks from algorithmic bias. Significant supervision, risk management, mitigation efforts are required to apply human judgment into the analytics realm. Next. What happens when the platform pillar is weak? This was the case at a large financial services firm. The company focused on the benefits of modern technology by porting its legacy data warehouses in an effort to simplify its legacy IT landscape. Focus was on IT needs and desires without clear commitment to re-platforming and also without clear business case for analytic wins that data warehouse in the cloud would fuel. This really resulted in a series of half measures. No business use cases that were compelling enough to justify the investment and no IT operational benefits that did so either. After a significant period of time and investment, the business began to push back as costs escalated and the platform itself was shelved. Next. So you are here hopefully with at least two of your colleagues representing a cross-section of your organization focused on starting or advancing your data journey. The pillar breakouts are designed to dive deeper into a particular pillar, focused on advancement either within that pillar and across to other pillars. So as a technology leader, you might be able to leverage investments in a data catalog to make data governance more actionable. As a business leader, you might allow for platform foundational costs that can accelerate future use case delivery, considered earlier in maturity efforts. In the left image, you can see the overlap between each pillar, value, governance, and platform. As you engage in these overlap pillar areas, you are performing adjacent pillar-friendly activities, and alignment between these pillars becomes the true exponential accelerator.